I'm Toby from Asheville, North Carolina. I was born and raised here. My family has a nice business. We make furniture. We have several furniture stores. We have been passing this business from generation to generation for many decades. It is always calm and quiet in our city. Although Asheville is only a densely populated city, still everyone knows each other. The neighbors are friendly. Many are friends with our family. I don't know, maybe because they are businessmen, or maybe because we are rich. In any case, my parents are often invited to events, be it at a birthday, Thanksgiving, or just dinner. As guests of honor, I have a little brother, Luke. We both go to the same school. One day, we got a new sheriff in town who knew that this small event would change my life forever. Sheriff Wright turned out to be a respectable officer. He worked honestly, which earned him a reputation as a good cop. Almost immediately, he came to our school to introduce himself and get to know the principal and the teachers. He said that we can fully rely on him. After the announcement, everyone dispersed and someone pushed me in the doorway. I looked and there was an unfamiliar girl. She looked at me with her round blue eyes and said quietly, "I'm sorry." My friends immediately reacted, began to say, "Hey Toby, they say it takes a split second to fall in love. Have you already fallen in love?" I felt embarrassed and I was rude to her, said that she was a blind cow and left. I swear I had never felt so ashamed of myself. All day I thought about her beautiful eyes, about her thin voice, as if from a cartoon. She must have been very offended. When I got home, my parents were preparing for dinner. Turns out they invited the sheriff to meet us. I had time to change and heard the doorbell ring. Opening it, I saw the sheriff was a blue-eyed cow standing next to him. I was not the only one who fell into a stupor. The sheriff greeted me and then introduced me to his daughter. "You probably already know each other. You now go to the same school," he said. "My name is Elle, if anything," she told me, "not a cow." Then my parents came up and invited them into the house. Generally speaking, the evening went well among adults. Personally, I was embarrassed. Tried to strike up a conversation, but Ellie was very offended. After dinner, I wanted to go outside and my mother said to invite the guest with me, so I had to take her too. We walked a little in our yard, rode a swing in the garden. There I asked for forgiveness. I said, "I'm very ashamed." Since that evening, we began a friendship. It turned out that we had many common interests. Every day we talked at school and I introduced her to my friends and she began to hang out with us. I felt something for her, but did not dare to confess. We talked for a couple of months and had become very close. Guys were even jealous of me. One day Ellie came to me late in the evening, slipped through the window. She was crying. She had not been able to get through her father for an hour, which did not sound like him. Ellie was worried about something happened to him. I calmed her down as best I could. Then my parents came into the room and I offered some tea. A couple of hours later, the sheriff made himself known. It turns out he was on a secret mission. I calmed her down and got a taxi. Ellie hugged me and I could not resist kissing her. It was an unreal moment. It seemed to me that I would go crazy with happiness. Inspired, I returned home. "I don't want to see her in our house, especially in your room. Is it clear to you?" my mom shouted. I didn't understand what was going on. Why was she suddenly so angry? Her dad went too far. Why the hell is he messing with our business now? For what? We invite him to dinner and now he does this? My mother could not calm down. I still did not understand what the matter was. The next day at school, Ellie and I discussed yesterday. Turns out their father was also forbade her to talk to me. Well, it's just like Romeo and Juliet. We laughed. Of course, we were not going to part ways because of this misunderstanding between our parents, but we simply had to find out what was going on. Ellie and I came to her house, where her father had an office in which he sometimes worked. Somehow, we opened the lock and what I saw there amazed me. For some reason, the pictures of my family were in the center of the board. On the table, he had newspaper clippings, articles about the opening of another branch of our store, and some crimes related to smuggling. My father has been doing this since we moved here. Previously, he was in the best in his field. He uncovered a bunch of criminal schemes. He thinks your parents are involved in something, but if they are in danger, we must warn them, Ellie suddenly said. I agreed. That evening, I ran home and burst into my father's office. He was there with Mom. They were discussing something. I literally started shouting from the doorway that we were in danger and that we should be careful. I told them everything I had seen in the sheriff's house and then offered to ask him for help. Mom and Dad listened attentively, and then they said, "Son, we told you not to talk to the cop girl. this is the last warning. You are putting yourself in danger. There are criminals in this city. So we help the sheriff solve the crime. We know everyone here, Father said. I left their room and calmed down a bit. My task is completed. I warned them. Before going to bed, I called Ellie. She said that her dad still is at work. I wanted to visit her, but she refused. That night, I could not sleep. For some reason, I was so nervous about the criminals. I felt like drinking cocoa. I went downstairs. It was deep into the night. Suddenly, I overheard my parents' conversation. They didn't sleep. Are you saying that not an entire batch was delivered? Why? We are running out of time. And then there was the sheriff, Mom shouted in a whisper. What? You yourself offered to invite him to dinner with us. You wanted to be friends with the cop. Well, did it help you, dear? Dad replied. And then they talked about Ellie and me. My parents expressed concern about the fact that we began to date. Then my father said that he would take everything out now and left somewhere. I followed him and saw how he entered the barn. He cut a new sofa and pulled something out of there. Looking closer, I saw the jewels. It can't be true, I said to myself. At that moment, someone from behind touched my shoulder. Why aren't you in bed? I asked from my mother's voice. Out of fear, I screamed so that my father heard it too. After that, they took me into the house and talked. I couldn't believe that my parents were criminals. I got angry and cried from it. But my parents said it was just business. You liked living rich. Do you think Father and I got money just like that? Even now, we are risking our health so that you and your brother have everything, said my mom. I could not listen to this and went into my room. In the morning at breakfast, my father said that my mother and I were leaving today. They did it so that I wouldn't tell Ellie everything. But I had to see her say goodbye though. My mom did not even allow me to go to school, but my dad said that he would take care of things. I began to pack my things. Suddenly, someone knocked on my window. Ellie came to me again. She was worried that I was not at school and that I did not return calls. I didn't know what to do. I was extremely pleased to see her again. Now I especially needed her. Mom and I are leaving. This is temporary. Some things came up, but I will write to you. Her eyes filled with tears. She did not understand what was happening. I hugged her, and in that moment, my mother came in. She saw Ellie and fell into a rage. She started shouting to leave our house. Then several police cars with flashing lights drove up to our house. I realized that this was the end. Mom and Dad tried to escape. They took me and my brother and tried to run out through the back door, but the house was already surrounded. My parents were arrested for illegal smuggling of drugs. It turns out that Ellie's father guessed everything when he came over for dinner. Our family had been looked at by cops for a while. No one could just find the courage and proof. My father managed to gloss over everything, thanks to money and connections. But not this time, and not with the new sheriff, whom he did not have time to find and approach. The sheriff was the opposite. He barely noticed that his daughter was talking to me. Gave her a watch with a bug. He listened to all the conversations with me. He also knew very well that his daughter would help me escape, or at least warn me about that this would help disrupt the next batch or the contraband and ruin my parents' plans. Ellie, without knowing, became a tool for investigation. Just like me, in the hands of experienced police officer, we were just a few hours short of getting out and buying time. But it seemed to me that then we would have to be on the run all our lives. Of course, the whole city was shocked by what they heard. The local press was full of loud headlines about our angelic family. Naturally, I did not approve of what we were doing. Perhaps for this reason, they did not tell me anything. But at the same time, my brother and I were sad by the fact that now two of our parents would be in prison. Now, while the trial is underway, they have hired good lawyers, so there is hope that they will at least get a deadline. We ourselves are still under the guardianship of our grandparents. Almost all our property has been seized. My family hated the sheriff, and he forbade Ellie to talk to me. Despite this, we still saw each other in secret and often communicated online. So it seems that our romance turned out to be no worse than Romeo and Juliet. I myself do not want to judge my parents for what they did, but I understand that there are always consequences for which must be responsible. Most of our viewers watch us without subscribing. So, dear viewer, please subscribe. This will help us make even more engaging stories.